Good question, I appreciate it. Okay, so we're ready to go, so start us off with introducing yourselves and we'll let you take it from there.
Hi guys, so we're doing the FBI's investigation into the NCAA scandals, something that you guys are relatively briefed on. I'm Marji Burnside.
I'm Nate Essex.
I'm Cal Stringer.
I'm Josh Lynn.
I'm Tom Nelson.
Alright, so today we're going to be covering the pay-to-play scheme that was in the undergraduate NCAA basketball program. We'll go over the NCAA amateurism rule that prevents these players from being paid monetarily for their involvement on the team. We'll cover the key figures involved, some key universities including NC State, Louisville. We'll be covering the media coverage of the scandal and the ramifications for those parties involved. And lastly, we'll be going over our thoughts on the issue and any questions you guys have.
Alright, so the overview of the issues. Adidas was funneling money through coaches and agents to get high-level recruits to come to their school. And a total of 10 people were arrested, and yeah.
I'm sorry if I threw you off.
Yeah.
So next we have the NCAA amateurism rules. So for D1 schools and D2 schools, they must follow these NCAA guidelines so they are allowed to play. They can't play with professionals, they can't participate in tryouts or practices with professional teams, they can't accept payments or accept prize money or be represented or be accepting gifts from agencies such as Chris Dawkins. And so any of these guidelines makes them not an amateur anymore and makes them a professional player in status.
So a few important names involved in the scandal are Jim Gatto, Merrill Code, and Christian Dawkins. Jim Gatto is the former head of Adidas basketball division. He was accused of funneling money to players' families and players in return for them signing with Adidas-sponsored schools and signing and hopefully signing with Adidas upon entering the NBA. Merrill Code is an ex-Clemson basketball star. He's a former consultant of Adidas basketball programs for high school and college basketball. He also allegedly conspired with Jim Gatto to work with coaches to get money to players' families along with Adidas. And then Christian Dawkins finally was an associate at agency ASM Sports. He also worked with Code and Gatto to get money from Adidas to families of basketball players, and he also was charged with bribing coaches with the intent for them to persuade the players to sign with him after college.
Alright, so who is Dennis Smith Jr.? He's a Fayetteville native. He was a top 3 point guard in the class in 2016. And Adidas funneled money through head coach Mark Godfrey at the time. He initially received $40,000, but in total he received $73,500 after signing. And he only stayed for 1 year before going to the NBA.
So an article released on March 9th revealed that that NC State had to turn over had a subpoena that they had to turn over all communications between their athletic staff and Dennis Smith Jr. involved, and that includes Dennis Smith Jr.'s father, his trainer, and pretty much anyone that had any relation to Dennis Smith Jr. NC State also had to turn over any communication with Gatto and Code or any other representative that had ties to Adidas. The indictment stated that in or around 2015, Gatto, along with an unnamed co-conspirator, conspired to funnel about $40,000 of Adidas money to Parent One, who is assumed to be Dennis Smith Sr., Dennis Smith Jr.'s father. NC State's response to this, the chancellor came out saying, if the allegations from the superseding indictment are proven true, any former employees involved knew they were breaking rules and chose to keep it hidden. We have no tolerance for those who would choose to damage the reputation of a great university. And Dennis Smith Jr. basically, when all this came out, just denied everything.
So, University of Louisville, there was an indictment that alleges the commitment of a player who made his decision late in the recruiting process, which was the 5-star recruit Brian Bowen. Unlike Dennis Smith Jr., he wasn't iffy about going to Louisville. He wasn't like bribed in that way where he didn't know if he was going to go there or not. But so there were key terms used: University 6, Company 1, and Player 10. University 6 was Gatto, codes, and the family's name of talking about Louisville. Company 1 was ASM Sports, and Player 10 was Brian Bowen. So the importance of June 3rd, Gatto and Bowen's agent, who was Christian Dawkins, both told Bowen that he needed to commit on or around June 3rd because that's when he would receive money. So here is a tweet that he's having to announce his commitment to the bill. Let's get it. On June 3rd. So there was a meeting between Dawkins and the head coach in Las Vegas, in a Las Vegas hotel room. Previous to them getting in the hotel room, the FBI agents put cameras and wires in the room, which proved that they were talking about not only Brian Bowen, but a incoming freshman of the class of 2019 that they were trying to have commit to Louisville, who went under the name as Player 11. So at the end, they said we had to keep this low key, couldn't be talking about it around too many people, and that's how they caught both Dawkins and the head coach.
So who was negatively affected? So first off, we have Adidas, who had to fire Jim Gatto, who was the head of their global marketing department. Because of this, it was a huge hit for them and a huge hit to their talent pool in Adidas. And then we have the other players. It's not fair to all the other players in small schools and people that weren't included in the scandal that they weren't paid the same amount as some of the players on the scandal list, because they were paid a good amount of money to be playing for these teams and then be playing later on for Adidas as a sponsored athlete. Then Andy Miller is the boss of Christian Dawkins for the ASM agency. Because of the scandal, he's no longer allowed to be representing NBA clients and also is disassociated with NC State. And then finally, the schools, multiple coaches like Rick Pitino had to be fired, and they had to start recruiting new head coaches, new assistant coaches, and even some new athletic presidents.
So the effect on the stock, through my research, I found that there wasn't a huge effect on the stock. The German-based company did fall about 3% that Tuesday that it was uncovered. Other than that, it rose pretty steadily to where it was before. Something I did find interesting was on September 26th, when the schemes were uncovered, the stock was traded over 1 million times. Usually the stock is only traded around 400,000 times per day. The day after, September 27th, it was traded 700,000 times, and third day it went back down to around 400,000. So this just proves that people were worried, kind of frantic, felt as though they should probably sell their stock, not knowing if anything else was going to be uncovered with Adidas.
Yeah, so obviously this scheme had a large impact on some of the organizations. So for the company Adidas, as previously mentioned, they lost a lot of their talent. Not only does losing your director of global sports and marketing for a company like Adidas a major hit, but having him step down in the wake of a scandal is just a reputational damage that is extremely hard to recover from. And on top of that, not only does that reputation hurt them going in for recruiting new talent, and especially in senior management, but they also have contracts with some of these schools. The next one that's up for renewal is in 2019 with Louisville, and it's in danger of being terminated, so they might lose that, which was a very strong contract for them. And then on the side of the schools, Louisville lost a lot of talent. They had to hire a new basketball coach who was, from all reports that I heard, was a very good basketball coach and was very relevant to the school because they're, amongst other things, a very basketball-centric school. And they also had to get a new athletic director and president. So clearly that hurt their ability to function a lot. So they lost a lot of talent.
And the media analysis. So initially the media and the public found out when the arrests were made, and the media heat came down on head coach Rick Pitino because he coached the NBA, he coached the Knicks and the Boston Celtics, and he coached Kentucky, which is also another college basketball powerhouse. And he had three Final Four appearances, and Louisville was the national champs in 2013, which they had to give up because of the scandal.
Resolving the issues. So, in light of the recent verdict on Jim Gatto, Moral Code, and Christian Dawkins, Adidas said that they'd be working with NCAA and the FBI in order to make sure that all investigations work out cleanly and fairly. And then, in light of all the scandals that have been going on with NCAA, they decide to head up a commission for independent from the NCAA to create new rules, headed up by Condoleezza Rice, who was the 66th former Secretary of State, I believe. And this would benefit athletes, such as allowing them to try out the NBA draft and stay an amateur athlete if they didn't sign with an NBA team. And it would also crack down on bad behavior, such as creating a commission that would help people crack down on bad behavior. It would be independent from the NCAA to find all parties involved in scandals such as this one and include universities and the university commissions. And then also require youth basketball operators and apparel stores to be transparent in their funds, so nothing like Adidas can happen again.
So in the end, Jim Gatto, Merrill Code, and Christian Dawkins were all found guilty of wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Their sentencing date is March 5th, and they're all expected to do somewhere between 2 and 4 years. Brian Bowen, after he left Louisville, he transferred briefly to South Carolina, where he later found out that he wouldn't be able to play due to NCAA rules with transfers. And he now plays in Australia for a team that he's not, he should be in the NBA, now he's in Australia, so he's, yeah. Dennis Smith Jr. Basically escaped pretty smoothly. He's in the NBA now, he plays for the Mavericks, he's doing great, so, yeah.
Our opinion on the topic, in response to scandal, we believe that student athletes should be paid for playing in Division I schools. They've worked hard to get to where they are. They've worked hard today to be getting to where they're supposed to be and be playing against other schools. And there's always a high risk of not being able to go into the NBA after being college basketball, going into different fields, and also a high risk of injury, like torn ACLs, that kind of thing. And it would prevent them from playing maybe for 1 year or for the rest of their lives, depending on how bad the injury is.
So questions? Yep, Pete?
Do you think that the NCAA should allow players to be paid in college?
So like we previously talked about, we did believe they should be paid in college, just because Josh covered. They have a huge risk of injury, of not being able to go pro, and they work so hard at it anyway, that it should be something that they are compensated for.
Do other sports have similar scandals?
Well, yes, they do, because in football, obviously, the same scandals are going on, but most of the time they go uncovered because they're so large and the amount that they're happening that usually they don't get uncovered.
What about the players who were part of the scandal now?
Well, Dennis Smith Jr. is now going to be like the Mavericks, and Brian Bell is playing in Australia.
Great, did we have all 4 questions? We have one more?
So, what was the outcome charge against Joe Gatto?
Joe Gatto was he was found guilty of all counts of wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and he's probably going to do it 2 to 4 years.
Yeah, the sentencing date is coming up in March.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in the end, we have to think about this a little bit in like the abstract. There was a lot of attention paid to this case by the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's the Southern District of New York, which is an extremely prestigious office. And we have to ask, was it all worth it? You know, sure, like we did, 3 people were found guilty, but should they, instead of be focusing on like these 3 individuals, should they focus on the organization and like the systemic problem of this? Should they try and like rework the system so that coaches don't feel the need to bribe a bunch of 17-year-olds to go to their university? Like it seems that this whole organization and system is a little backwards. So maybe we should rethink the system from like start from scratch. However, it is worth noting that the FBI is allowing the NCAA to open up their own investigations. That was announced 2 days ago. So it looks like that there might be some changes coming down the pipeline to facilitate an easier recruiting process for all parties involved. So.
Yeah, definitely interesting that the NCAA is opening up an investigation even though the FBI already closed their own. And thank you for your time.
Great.